All right, hey guys, welcome back, guys and girls, I suppose, everyone out there. Welcome back. This is another episode of Meet the Authors. Today we have Josh Grant, a man of many talents, who does. I met him through Diabolical Shrimp, which is, if you get a chance to look that up, that's it's got a large selection of reviews and original material. So it's a great place to go pick up some exposure to different authors that you may not be familiar with yet in the genre of I noticed that there's a lot of sci-fi. I saw that, but there's also some more conventional stuff. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you've got over there, Josh?
Sure. And yeah, thanks for having me on. And so, yeah, like Chuck said, my name is Josh Grant. I'm a number one best-selling comic creator, a best-selling author of novels as well. I'm a video game designer now. I'm a YouTube talk show host, and I created years ago. I created Diabolic Shrimp is the name of my website, and we have a YouTube channel as well as the offshoot of that. And it's just a place that I created. Originally it was just my author site, and then it became I just realized when I first published like 6 years ago, that was like really hard to get support and get some like concrete support, and also like having to navigate like 30 different sites, like on Goodreads or something that each have their own rules, and everyone's like really specific about what you could post and what you can't, and where is this and where is that. And I wanted something a little bit more loose than that. And I wanted a place that was like actual concrete support for authors that they didn't have to pay for the majority of it. It's like I wanted to create something that was like as free as humanly possible. And because everyone's like, yeah, I'll support you, but you have to pay this, or you have to give a book here. And I just wanted something that was like people can come and I'd review their book, and it blew up. And so but it's become a YouTube channel now because we just have a huge community on Diabolic Shrimp now. We're up to across the whole network of Diabolic Shrimp, about 5,000 people, both authors and readers. And so it's just like it's become a passion of mine to like try and connect like authors and readers. And the nice thing is overall, like everything I make from anything from my book sales to anything on Diabolic Shrimp, which about to launch like the business wing of that, I give like 10% of that to a good cause. So I
Oh,
give that
awesome.
to, yeah. So I give it to like ocean exploration and childhood disease research are the big ones. And then a bunch of other stuff along the way. We planted trees at one point. And so we just like to support a lot of just universally good things.
That's really awesome. Got a question about. I'm sure you get asked this a lot, but the name Diabolic Shrimp isn't something that just pops into people's heads. So where did you come up with that, or did it just pop into your head?
Oh no, it definitely did. I started Diabolic Shrimp, and I started it actually as a totally different name, which I won't utter to anybody. It's a nice little Easter egg. If anyone's good at coding, you can actually dive into it. It's still in the source code of my website, but yeah, it was originally called something else for like about 6 hours. And I was so excited that I launched this thing and I became an author and all this. And I went out with friends, and we went out to eat, and friends and family and stuff. And I was like celebrating my website and everything. And I tell them the name, and it's just something I came up with like like off the top of my head, kind of. It's like I was like, oh, it's got this like I've got this connections to all these things. And it like it honestly sounded like a porn site or something. And they all laughed me under the table, and they even told our waiter, and the waiter's laughing at me. And I was like, yeah, maybe I should probably change that. I don't know. And so I changed it to Diabolic Shrimp just to have some fun, because so like the Diabolic is my diabolic plan to get every author in the world on there and take over the world. And then the shrimp is because authors, we're the little guys, so it's
Right.
like individually, maybe not that impressive, but like together, when you see like clouds of shrimp, it's actually really impressive if you ever watch a video of it. But it was just to have a bit of fun to it. And it's just a lot of fun. But if you figure out the original website name, it's still at its core programming, and I still have to log in as that, and it just burns me every time. I'm like, and so I just can't get rid of it. But it's fun. So it's like and ever since, everyone sends me lots of information about shrimp. So I become something of a shrimp expert, even though before I never knew anything about them. But everyone's like, here's some interesting fact about shrimp. I'm like, oh, cool.
Oh, nice. Yeah, fringe benefit, I guess.
Yeah.
So, well, it reminded me, and I was wondering if you were going to make this connection. It reminded me of there's a Facebook group called 20 Books to 5K, or to, I think that's it, 20 books, or yeah. And it's they have different tier levels of authors, like depending on what your cells are. And so at the very bottom, you have like shrimp and different types of fish, and then you work your way up to like lobster and other things. So it's pretty interesting. That was not a planned plug, but that's a little bit of a plug. But it's a pretty interesting way to think about your author journey. So that's it's kind of cool.
Well, it's definitely morphed over time. So it's like originally it was like I only had 6 people on there for like the whole first year, and so it's like and that's always a reminder to all authors. It's like, because it's demoralizing at first when you get out there and you're like, oh, I'm gonna make like 5,000 sales right away, and I've got 500 Facebook friends, I'm gonna make 500 there, and like you sell like a book a month, and it's like it's super demoralizing. But it's like that was like on the website, but it's like you just got to keep going. But like I had like 6 people on there originally. Now it's up to, like I said, across the network, both YouTube and the website, it's over 5,000 by this point. Which
Nice.
is really cool, which is nice because our ultimate goal is to send shrimp to space. It wasn't originally, but but we're going to.
Gotta have goals. Gotta have goals, right? All right. So tell me a little bit about like you have a lot of different projects going on. So I know that you write novels. I also know that you're into comic books. I know that you're into video games, like not just playing video games. I could see the Raccoon City behind you. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah, you'll see them all over the place. Sonic is over here somewhere. I don't know if you can see him. He's
yeah,
way on the edge of the frame.
I see.
But
Yeah, yeah.
there's Mass Effect up here. But
So that's a lot. So is there one category, like when you think of yourself, do you think of yourself as like one thing first, or you're just like you don't really have, or do you just like, do you gravitate toward one art form, or are you more like just kind of uh spread across all of your different projects, kind of like as passionate about all of them? And I guess another question is, do you weave threads between like some of your novels into your video games and into your comics? Are there like threads that tie those together? I'm just kind of curious about your process and what you
Mhm.
how you organize your time as one.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure how I organize that either, actually. It's like, no, yeah, it's kind of interesting. This is actually something I like absolutely love about writing world, and where it's kind of taken me, I guess. It's like it's been just kind of an interesting journey, and just life in general, I guess. It's like I was originally an actor, actually, and then I was successful at acting. I was a stage actor, and then I just had a night where I needed something different, and I left that and became an elementary teacher. And then just my books took off at the time, and so I left teaching to pursue that more, and still teach now and then. But like it's just like all of that stuff though kind of poured into weirdly like what I ended up doing, of course. And so like I started with novels, and I started just with Pandora, which we'll probably talk a decent amount today because it's my horror book, and tis the season for spooky stuff,
It
right?
is. It
And so
is.
and I just started with that one, and then I worked into other novels, and there's a whole bunch of novels that I wrote. And then eventually though, I was never planning on going into like the visual medium, so I wasn't planning on doing comics, but I just had an idea for what became the Lost Boy, which is my like vigilante crime fighting like comic book. It's like if Peter Pan was a vigilante crime fighter, and so I wanted to
I love
retell
it.
like Peter Pan with all these like characters, but it's all like realistic and stuff. And I was originally writing that as a short story kind of collection kind of thing, and I was just like, no, I'm like, this has to be a comic. It's just it's superhero, and I knew nothing about comics, and so I had to like pay a lot of money into that originally. And I really worked well with my business partner and comic artist Laszlo, and now we're business partners. But that really changed the game though. I was shocked. I thought it was going to be like my expensive pet project like comics would be, but and I was just going to pay all this money and no one was going to read this because I didn't think anyone read indie comics, anything outside of like Marvel or DC, and I was really shocked because it's actually quite the opposite. It became a #1 bestseller like within the first week, and it just like
Nice.
shocked. Well, it shocked me because it's like Pandora is like a bestseller, but it took me years of promoting and working and having that endurance. And that one just shocked me how much comics just kind of sell themselves a bit, even though you still have to market them and stuff. But ever since that, I kind of pivoted everything towards comic world. And so I'm entirely focused pretty much on comics by this point. So I'm turning the Fifth Ascendant, which is my fantasy book. Is a big brick of a book. It's like 770 pages, and it's one of the best stories I've ever written, but it's not necessarily the best writing. So I'm turning that into a comic and just having tons of fun with that. We're doing a horror comic, like another zombie apocalypse about to come out. We're writing I freelance right now comics for other people as well. And then so I got several projects there, and then we're working on a Star Wars one, so we'll get into that later.
Ooh,
But
fun.
it's like trying to balance all those things, and it's like I'm a very like, let's do this now and let's do this. And Laszlo, my artist, is actually the only person I ever found that's like more crazy ambitious than me, because all of a sudden the other week he was just like, let's do a video game. I'm like, I love playing video games. So I was like, I never
So
thought
why
about
not?
making one. And so I was like, here's a cool idea that could be a video game. And then he's jumped on that, and now I'm helping to program the thing. I'm learning all about that. So it's just it's a really cool journey. It's really fun. Like, it's really fun to like try all these new things and being willing to say yes to the adventure. But it's like, it's definitely interesting. But it's interesting how they do kind of influence each other in a way, though, because it's like, in a way, I'm going back to like Fifth Ascendant and turning it into a comic. And it's actually really fun, because I was originally going to rewrite Fifth Ascendant and re-release it, but then I like found I wanted to do it in a comic world, and then trying to do all the visual drawings for it, because I do all the concept design and the creature design and character design and vehicles and stuff, and like writing out these things or drawing out these things actually kind of are starting to inform the story more. So it's like going back and forth like that. And same thing with like, say like the video game, like our video game is called Project Ego. It's almost like a Terminator future kind of thing. It's like humanity's kind of mostly destroyed. It's all kind of robots and stuff, and it's kind of like a Metroidvania, old school 2D side scroller.
Nice.
But we're like, it's like I drew all this stuff, I drew all these bosses, and I came up with stuff, but then it starts to inform like the story, and then Laszlo comes in and does all this art, and it's like, oh, let's do that as part of the story, and everything's like story. So they're all kind of influence each other. Many of my books are connected, but some of them are their own thing. Like the Lost Boy, like Peter Pan one, it's like it's its own thing. But we throw Easter eggs in all these things in all of our comics and in the video game. They're all going to have all these connections. The video game, in a sense, is actually connected to Nexus, which is my sci-fi future kind of book, a kid surviving the robot apocalypse. There's some connections there, but they're not like necessarily like direct connections.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah, I've got you. That remind your comment on the indie scene not being what you, or exceeding your expectations, being able to bring the indie comic and actually make that succeed. That brought to mind a Netflix show that I'm watching called The Imperfects, where one of the main characters is a guy that struggles on writing these indie not comic books, and who happens to, as the journey progresses, develop superpowers. So, which is kind of a cool like little trade-off there. But he also expounds. But the connection was that he was one of the scenes that in the show is he's arguing with this guy that runs a comic book company about how great his comic is and that he's supposed to be able to do it. And the guy's like, your typical boardroom situation where he's like, yeah, but you can't sell these, blah blah blah. So that's how I imagine that going. Is like somebody telling you can't sell these, and then you going out and selling a bunch of copies of it. But
yeah, well, that's one of my, I guess one of my biggest joys in the indie scene, but also like just kind of working at it over time. It's like, I originally was only going for traditional publishing. I like refused to look at anything indie and self-publish. And back in the day, it used to actually be like self-publishing used to be like kind of frowned upon, because it was a gamble. It used to be like you had to buy so many copies, and good luck if you if it turned out. Nowadays, like, that's actually, the game has entirely changed. It's entirely flipped, where it's like traditional publishers, like, they still take majority of your royalties, but they still expect you to market and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, traditional publishing has its benefits too. So I don't want to necessarily bash it too much, but
yeah.
it's like you get more of your royalties now, and you can just go on tonight and publish with a Word document. I don't recommend it. I recommend taking time with your books always, because a lot of people will do that. They'll just be like, throw it out there. And it's just like, okay. But but at the same time, it's like I was surprised because I eventually was like, okay, I'll try indie publishing, and I did it. And at first, it's like at first you don't necessarily succeed right away, and it's like, and that's a
No.
big thing I'm gonna hit on. It's like for people, it's like you just got to keep going. Like Pandora was my very first book, and I never thought it'd become a bestseller, to be honest. I mean, at first you're like, yeah, I'm gonna sell like 5,000 right off, but it's just like, but over time I was like, I realized I had to put in the work and put in the work and put
Yep.
in the work. Like half your time is actually marketing, and that's what surprised me. It's like how much I fell in love with like becoming an indie author and an indie business owner now, and creating stuff. And then I was surprised also on the marketing side of it. Like most authors despise marketing, and I was right there with them. I was like, the
Yep.
marketing, yeah, it's like, and it's just like, I was right there in the beginning. It's like, marketing is the worst, and it's like nowadays I've weirdly become passionate about that, and that's through like, especially through Diabolic Shrimp and building this community.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't really expect it to ever like become a community. It really has. It's actually a really like really nice place, and it was really cool because it's actually kind of like my vision for it, even though I wasn't sure I'd ever get there, kind of thing. And it's growing now, and now I'm actually pumping a lot of energy into that. Like half my time is like reading authors books, and I used to not be passionate about that, but now I absolutely love reading books of all genres. We have all genres in Diabolic Shrimp. You're right; it's definitely a lot of sci-fi and fantasy on there, but I mean, I've read everything under the sun there. A lot of romance, a lot of supernatural, and even cookbooks and like
Yep.
business books and stuff. And so it's like it's been a really fun journey, but it's like just how it evolves, like, and how much like weirdly I evolve with it, I guess, like learning to become passionate about things I wasn't passionate about.
Yeah. Well, I know for a fact that there's the what is it? The Howard County Mysteries author. Man, I've got one of his books right here.
Talk
Hold on.
about Dale Layman.
Yeah, yeah, Dale. Yeah, I know for a fact that you've got some mystery stories on your site. He
Well,
was
and Dale won he was our very first Shrimpy Award winner, and so I started just a couple of years ago the Shrimpy Awards, which is the smallest award on the internet. Is what I call it, and like, but it's like it's prestige, and so you can win a golden Shrimpy on the site if you come join us on Diabolic Shrimp if you're an author or a reader. It's like because we actually have one for readers now too, for people that review other people's books and stuff. But so if you like to review books, you can get free books and things, and win money because I give away paid prizes for Shrimpy Awards. So
nice, nice.
one of them you do have to like buy one of my books to enter. That's for the authors for like short story, but the other ones are like there's free thing. I always have free options for everything, so it's like it's like join our YouTube or subscribe to our YouTube or whatever. It's like simple stuff like that.
All right. So come out to Diabolic Shrimp, get free stuff. That's what I
Yep, pretty much
heard.
actually. It's like especially for readers. I was like, we love our readers, so it's like I'm always giving away books to readers on there and trying to connect them with authors by giving away authors books and things.
All right. That's cool. So I have some very specific and very curious. I'm curious about the process because I've got my novel Models and Citizens. I don't know if you see it's back there.
Yeah.
It came out a
Oh,
few
I've
years back.
I've seen it. I reviewed Models and Citizens.
Oh yeah, yeah,
It
that's
was a
right.
really good book.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember your review. I appreciate that. Um, but one of the things that somebody commented me about is it would make a great like sci-fi series. But I think that's I have different ambitions. I like the idea of a comic book because I grew up reading like graphic novels, like Dark Horse comics just came out when I was
I
younger.
love Dark Horse comics.
Yeah, great series. That was my introduction to Guy Man, and then it just like ballooned from there. So I've always been interested in comics. But I'm at the point of I write novels. So to get from 0 to 1, like now I write novels, but I'm interested in pursuing possibly doing a comic. What was your first step to in that direction? Did you just sketch out a bunch of stuff that was? How did you approach that?
Okay, yeah, I was like, I didn't sketch anything originally, and so it's like I sketched, like I never took an art class in my life, so it's like I like sketching all the stuff was like nowadays I'm actually like decent at art. It's never nothing I would ever like publish or anything, but it's just like I'm actually super proud. I've got like piles and piles of artwork I've done for some of our various comics that Laszlo and I are doing. But originally I did The Lost Boy, right? And the only reason I did that is because like it got stuck in my head. Like you always write the one that gets stuck in your head, and it's like I was like, oh, this is such a good story, and it has to happen. And I was originally, doing like short story version of it, and it's just like no, it just has to be in the visual medium. It has to be a comic. It's just naturally, that's just in its soul, and so if that's where you're at for your story, it's like it's like taking it into like visual world. Then like, I mean, of course you start by writing the script, and writing a comic script is very, like, very different than writing a novel script. And it's kind of tricky because it's like you have to have an idea of, like, I guess what your budget is, both with like money and with pages, and looking at like how to sell it on the tail end. And so like the maximum amount of pages I would say you would want in a single issue is about 70 to 100, because once you get there, it's like, it's especially if it's a new comic, it starts to get really expensive on the selling side of it. So like no one's going to buy it if it's too expensive and it's a new comic. It's like, so the
So
new
all that
one.
color printing or all the graphic
Mhm.
reproducing that is a lot more expensive than just the written word. Is that
Well,
right?
and it surprised me though, in a weird way, because I thought it was gonna be crazy expensive. I'd never be able to sell it, but it surprised me that actually my comics like are generally cheaper than my novels, and it shocked me actually that, yeah, I thought it'd be way more expensive. But once you start to get up there in that like 70 to 100 range of pages, that becomes like more expensive. But it's also going to be really expensive for you on the art side of things, and so you're looking at like somewhere between like 30 to $60 a page
Mm.
for like just artwork and stuff like that. And so it's like, and that's tricky. And I taught myself, I couldn't find a person to format these things. So a lot of these things I taught myself because like I couldn't find somebody that can actually like reliably do it. And so and I lucked out with like Laszlo. So I originally went looking for like, so I was like, what artists am I looking at? How expensive? And you can even get up to like $120 a page, and that's really on the expensive side. Honestly, that's where you're getting somebody from Marvel or something. And so it starts to get really expensive, on that side of it. So you got to kind of set your budget and start saving for some of that, and understand like how the scope of your story. And then you go back and you write it. So it's like writing it is kind of tricky because, as authors, we're like, everything is important. This little thing is so important to the story, and you really
But
do
he
have
has to
to.
pick up a ballpoint pen right now.
Yeah,
Exactly.
honestly, and I'm like, and definitely not the expert at that. Like the Lost Boy, I wrote from scratch, so it's like it was written to be a comic, and so it was actually weirdly a little bit easier doing that. I'm going back now and rewriting, or turning the Fifth Ascendant into a comic. So, and that thing, like I said, it's a 770-page book. I was on fire for that story. It's this awesome fantasy world, but it's like not necessarily my best seller or anything like that. And I just wanted to really share that with the world, and it would be perfect for the visual medium. And so like I'm going back through and like I did all the art for that and stuff, but like I decided to chop it into 8 chunks. And that's one of those ones I'm going back through and I'm like, this has to be in there. And there's some things that just like rip my soul out, where I'm like, nope, I got to get rid of that. I just do. And it's like, and a lot of it's like background, like it's like we can tell this in the picture versus the words, and it's like it's tricky, honestly, taking a novel and turning it into that world. But it's like it's paring it down. So it's like the trick of it is like it's like playing, it's like a house of cards. It's like writing, you can write as much as you like, and then later on you can pull it back, versus during the comic you have to have a pretty clear view of like what the end game is. You can edit it later, but it's actually it's kind of a hassle. So it's like it's kind of like, okay, how many people can I get on this panel, like this one panel, without making it look crowded, but still like get all their like words in and still make it look cool without making it look clunky, and then trying to do some cool art things. And so typically what I do for like, it's like a movie script though. And this is where like my theater background, I used to act, but I also used to build stages and do costume design. So it actually really helped because now I can do a lot of costume design for these things. But I also like the scripts actually really help. So if you ever want to know what it's like writing a comic, just look at scripts like movie scripts or play scripts. It's just basically like I just write it out like one, like my first panel. It's like Peter walking in with the rain soaking down, wide image. We see LA in the background, and that's kind of it. And then it'll be like, number two, it's like close up on Peter's face. He's crying. The rain is dripping down his face. and then I write like Peter, and then just whatever he says.
I
And so
gotcha.
it's very much like a movie script. And so it's like, and
That,
I
well, that
like
makes sense, right? Because you're like you have, unlike a novel where you have to draw, like if you want the reader to know what a room smells like, that there's popcorn, but maybe with a hint of vinegar for whatever reason, you have to put that in there, but
Mhm.
you won't necessarily put that in a comic because you have visuals that you can use to help bring that forward. That makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
And it's kind of tricky. It's very fun. It's actually very addicting. And after a while, it's like a game. And it's like, okay, how can I get this in here? And like, especially with like Fifth Ascendant, like turning the novel into it, it's like, how can I get this background that you just naturally can write in a paragraph really easily? Like, oh, that's so and so, and he's from this kingdom or whatever, and build that depth. Say, how can I put that in here in a way that makes sense, but it's like totally in the comic? And sometimes it's in people's conversation. And but I found, I don't know, at first I was very sparse in a lot of things, so there wasn't as much words in my first comic. Over the time I learned you can actually put a lot more in there, and so conversations grew over time. And so it's like, but you try to tell as much with the art, because it's like you're very aware, like everything, every word I write is covering up artwork, so you want the artwork to be like the wow kind of thing.
Oh, I didn't think about
And
that.
so it's like you're thinking about space and like that kind of thing. And so and but it's like it's not as bad as you would think, but it's like but I typically find about 42 words per panel, so it's like that's the maximum, so you don't necessarily want more than that. And it's kind of tricky when you're writing it, because it's like you have to think of all this, so it's a little bit harder to get into it sometimes. Like it's a little bit more like end product focus, versus like when you're writing something, it's more like the feel of the scene and stuff. And
Yeah.
so often I find comics, it's actually easier to get the feel of the scene when I'm done writing it. I can go back and edit it and stuff and like change some of that. It's like it's easier to get that bigger picture, versus when you're writing it, it's so tricky, like trying to just build this like house of cards. And it's kind of tricky because like when you pull a panel later, everything around it has to change. It's like a house of cards collapsing and you pull a card, it's like, so it's kind of tricky on like that side of it, where it's like thinking about your budget too, like how many pages can I afford? And I usually say like
And
20 to
how
30.
many rewrites can I, or how many repanels can I do?
Yeah. Well, and then after that, just as a functional thing too, it's like I'm a huge fan of Fiverr, like Fiverr with two
Hmm.
R's. If you never heard of it, it's like Fiverr.com is like a nice one. It's kind of one of those gig sites, and you can find everything under the sun on Fiverr. It's like but like it's a good place also to get like marketing and stuff like that. You can find a lot of cheap marketing and things, and some of it's good and some of it's bad, but whatever. It's like, but you can see up front what it costs, like $5 for this. And like for artists, it was great, because originally I was trying to find through other sites where it's just like $60 an hour. And I'm like, how many hours does it take to
Right.
draw? I
Yeah.
don't know. And it's like, so it's like Fiverr was nice. It was like $60 a page or $20 a page, and you can put your budget in there, and you can shop around and you can see their previous works and stuff like that. And so that's where I originally found Mark Rossetti, who worked he worked on Marvel, he worked on Ghost Rider, and I hired him and had him do our first issue of The Lost Boy, and it went out, and then it became a bestseller. And then Mark was like, I got picked up by WB Games, and I can't work with anybody else. And I'm like, no. And it was like,
Oh.
and so I was like, right then I had to find, it was like a nerve-wracking process of finding an artist that could still capture that quality, but have their own style, but also blend their style and still do everything. And I really lucked out. I found Laszlo Nemeth, and he and I have been working together ever since. Now we're business partners and everything. So it used to cost a lot of money. Nowadays, he and I just kind of share the profits. And so
Right.
nowadays we just do a bunch of projects, which has kind of exploded it's a dangerous thing where I'm like, ooh, I can do everything now.
That's awesome. What a great place to be.
Yeah.
All right, I'm curious about, yeah, that's a lot of good information. I've looked at Fiverr for some things, um, but and it really is hit or miss though, is what I
Hmm.
found out there. So I think it's fortunate that you're able to find some pretty good folks. I think if you're diligent and spend the time, then you can probably get down to like find what you're looking for.
Yeah,
So
it's
that's
like
a good suggestion.
especially art world's kind of nice, because you can actually see their work.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes some of the other stuff, it's like for authors especially, it's like there's a lot of marketing people that are like book promotion, and it's like that's
Mm,
very hit or miss sometimes, to be
that's what I was
honest.
talking.
And
Yeah,
it
that's
and it's tricky because it's like some of it is good and some of it isn't, and it's like it's just kind of like, and sometimes you just had to take a gamble, to be honest. And that was even art world. It's like you can see some of their previous works, but it's like you try to imagine that with yours, and it's like, would that work? Like Laszlo, all of his works were like realism, and it was like kind of different than what I was expecting, but it's like I was like, that could be good. This could be good. And I was kind of torn. And I was like, well, I'll just try this. And I lucked out. So sometimes it's just try it and see if it works. And
Yep.
sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't, I guess.
Right on. That makes sense. All right. So question, I feel like it is Halloween just around the corner. Pandora is your horror show or your horror novel, right?
And
Can you tell
hopefully
us a
someday a show.
yeah, maybe I'm predicting the future there.
Yeah.
You can you tell me a little bit about it, about what happens, like who set up the character, maybe explain a scene or
Mhm.
something that you think conveys
Yeah.
well, a sense of trepidation at least.
Yes, indeed. Well, I was like, and I was like, I would put it more in the thriller category, even because it's like, I excel. That's why I found like in my writing, I excel at action scenes, and this is why I actually like. I think I enjoy being in the visual medium so much because I love movies and video games, and so it's like I think all my book writing was eventually meant to be some sort of comic or something, and so like Pandora though, it's like I like I personally love creature features. So I grew up watching The Thing and Aliens and all the kind of classics, I guess you would call them now. It's like but like I love where it's a horror thing, but and it's creepy, but it's also like an interesting creature. That's more my beat. So I'm not so much into the like like a
The slasher,
slasher or
yeah.
the like haunted house kind of things. Like I mean they're good in their own sense, and like the haunted house ones I just don't like because I'm like I live in a house and I'm kind of a scaredy cat actually, and so I was like I don't want to watch a movie that I'm like looking behind my corner like myself all the time. And so I'm like, but I was like I ran out of I was at the time I was like on fire for like, oh, I want to watch like I'm gonna watch Phantoms and I'm gonna watch The Thing and I'm gonna watch all these creature features. And then I was reading some of them. I was reading like Dean Koontz had some really good ones, and like and I like loved that stuff. And then I ran out of like good creature features I can really find, and there isn't actually that as many of them as you would think, I guess. And it's like I mean there's a decent amount, but I was like, what do I do? And I was like, I'll just write one. And I used to write back in college, but I hadn't written in years. But I was like, it'd be fun to write like a horror book, even though I'm a big scaredy cat, and that's just like not my normal thing, I guess. And so I had a lot of fun with it. So like Pandora is it's very aliens esque if you've seen Aliens, of course. It's like and
Absolutely.
like James Cameron's a big inspiration for me, even though he's kind of a jerk in real life, but he's a really good writer and visionary, I guess. But like Pandora is very it's like a cruise ship goes missing and then it comes back a week later and no one knows what happened to this cruise ship or how it was even able to go missing, kind of thing, in our modern world. And so the business tycoon that owns the cruise line, he also owns all this other stuff, but he ends up like getting a lady in the middle of the night, she's a doctor, and bring her into his like office and telling her to go with this thing. And she had a past tragedy and he offered to fund her research and stuff like that if she goes with his team. And so it's kind of this weird mystery of like, why is she part of this, because she's really off the wall. And so he sends her along and then sends this like mercenary team along, and they go flying out in like a helicopter and landing on this cruise ship. And I love like one of my favorite kinds of brands of horror. It's like, I mean, I grew up playing Resident Evil and Silent Hill, and I love that
Yeah.
like what happened here, that kind of horror.
Yes.
It's like the post-apocalypse, but it's like you weren't part of it. So like Walking Dead did a good job of this in the beginning, where it's like, the sheriff woke up and it's just like, what's going on? 28 days later, another one
Yep.
that's
Yep.
good like that. So it's like I love that what's going on, and then that slowly building dread. And so of like figuring out what's happening, I
Right.
guess. And
And then not only was it as bad as you thought it was, but it's worse.
yeah, and it's like, and I love that. And it's like, and I love a good twist. So it's like
Yeah.
every one of my books and my comics, they all have a twist. So there's always something like I'm a huge fan of what's called perspective shift. And so it's like you show your audience all along like kind of what's going on, and then towards the end you give them that piece of information that flips it on its head. So like The Sixth Sense does a good job of this. I
Yep.
won't spoil it if people haven't seen it, I guess, by this point. But it's kind of like you show them all along like what's really happening, and then you hit them with that twist, and then they can go back and read and be like, oh, that's what that was.
And it was
And it's like,
all there the whole time.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was like that wasn't who you thought they were the whole time. And that was the fun. So like Pandora was really fun to write. It's like someone made me play the game Dead Space, and that's a
Hmm.
brilliant and horrible game at the same time. It's like, is the scariest game I've ever played in my life. It's like, it's in the future, and this guy lands on a spaceship, and it's like there's creatures, and it's just like, it's an absolute horrible game, but it's brilliant for what it's meant to be. And
Right.
I hate playing. I'm a scaredy cat, so I was like, I played Resident Evil growing up, and I'm like, I also hate playing horror games. I just
Right.
like the story, and nowadays it's great because you just watch someone else play them. You don't have to play them yourself. But Dead Space, my friend made me play that, and then I was having a nightmare about it years later. And that's actually what Pandora became. It's like, originally I had it set in space, but I was like, I wanted like down to earth where everyday people can like experience it. And I wanted to isolate it. I wanted to make it very much the thing. And so it's like, how do I capture that feel of the thing where you're isolated and this horrible thing is going on? There's creatures, but it's like, and who's who, that kind of thing, that the thing did really well. And so I did that out on a cruise ship, and it was actually really fun because I was on a cruise at the time, and that's where I was like, aha, this is what it's going to
Aha.
be. And so I started writing it on that cruise ship. It was the Carnival Magic is what it was. And I actually got them to get my book on their ship. It's in their little ship
Oh,
library on there.
nice.
And so, and I based like the layout on the Carnival Magic. And so it's a festival cruise ship in mine, but it's fun. I just had a lot of fun with it. It's like it's fun to like navigate the ship, and horror books are kind of fun because you can get really tight with a character and really go in depth. Like all my books are wrapped around like a moral core as well. So Pandora, it's like the Pandora creation myth where it's like, Pandora opened the box and all the evil leaked out, but only hope was left inside the box kind of thing, and or a vase. And
Hmm.
like, and so the book is all about like finding hope in a dark place. And so all these characters are actually like modeled around that. They all have some sort of trauma or something like that, and they find hope in a dark place in a sense. So it's about more than just being actiony and creatures and figuring out what's going on, but there's actually a moral core. And its follow-up is Jericho. Jericho is like kind of its sister book. They're like, it's a sequel. Jericho's a sequel, but it's also like you can actually read it on its own if you wanted to. And it's like it's a whole separate spiel. And same thing, Jericho's like Joshua fought the battle of Jericho and the walls came tumbling down. It's like all about walls in our lives and stuff. So everything's wrapped around like a central moral in all my books.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I like that. And I think that that's a throwback to like a lot of the old horror movies. I'm thinking back to like Creature from the Black Lagoon. I'm thinking
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of the old books movies. And then even in sci-fi, really, like if you think about like Day of the Triffids is one that I bring up occasionally.
Oh
I don't know if
gosh,
you've ever seen that one.
I no that creeped the hell out of me when I was a child. I was like, it still does
It
actually.
can, it can. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I saw it first when I think I was like 7. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely. But there's always like coming back to it like years later. Now that I have more context, I see that there are social statements and comments in the book, so or in the novel and in the movie. So I think I like that is that it can appeal on the level of, hey, I just want to be scared, but then it's also like if you think about it, there's actually meaning behind it. I think that for me, it makes for a better immersive experience. Because then I still have something to chew on like days later. Otherwise, if it's just fluff, then that's like cotton candy. It's gone the next day. but
Yeah.
but that gives it some staying power, I think.
Yeah, well, I'm big into that. It's like I mean, that's the purpose of writing, and that's what I love about horror. Horror, you can really tell a really deep story. That's why I chose to start there. It's like and then after that, I did like fantasy and stuff. And fantasy is fun because it's more about the world, and you can do a lot there. But it still has a lot of morality to it. But like I found like horror is the best medium that I've ever written in to tell a really like deep and meaningful story. Surprisingly, because you can really highlight this is super evil and this is super good, and this is what good looks like when it clashes with evil, and you can really find some like fine tune a lot of those things. And like I was having a lot of fun with lately we're going to be publishing here in a couple months. We backed it up a couple months. We were actually supposed to be publishing right around now, but is Another Zombie Apocalypse is our new comic series. And so Another Zombie Apocalypse, if anyone wants to check it out on my YouTube, Diabolic Shrimp, we have the trailer for it. We made a movie trailer essentially for Another Zombie Apocalypse. We had a lot of fun doing that. And so it's a collection of like short zombie apocalypses that are all different. They're all set in different dimensions or worlds or whatever. But they're all connected because I like short stories, but I always feel like their downfall is that they're not all connected. They're not all building towards something. So I always like doing like the kind of Marvel thing where they all have some sort of connection to
Yeah,
something
yeah, I like
going
that
on,
too.
you know?
Yep.
And so like, so I connected it all, and it's all about this bigger meaning to it, but they're all their own interesting, different takes on the zombie apocalypse. And I loved going into that one because kind of like what you said, the older horror movies were all about trying to prove some moral point. And that's what the older zombie movies were. Actually, the original zombie movies, like the very first one, Night of the Living Dead, was actually all about racism, is actually what it was actually trying to highlight. It's like stopping racism. And then the second one, Dawn of the Dead, was actually all about like consumerism. And then the third one, Day of the Dead, was all about like the military industrial complex. And that one got really weird. But but they all tried to tell like some sort of moral stance. And so that's what I decided to do with all these like zombie apocalypses. They're all very different takes on the zombie apocalypse. So we looked at zombies and we're like, how can we do that in a different way, but it still has to have zombies?
Yeah.
And then how can we also tell this like moral story? So like the first one in there is a robot, and it's like its name is Emmerich, and it kind of wanders around, and it's like it's in the near future. So a guy has a service robot, and this robot's wandering around contemplating humanity because it sees zombies as still being human, but eventually it kind of gets stuck in its head where it's like it can't harm a human, but it can't let a human like be harmed, and it gets this moral conundrum of like, do I save this lady or do I kill a zombie? But a zombie is a human. And then it's like, if I'm helping my master who's sick, it's like he's going to die eventually, but unless I let him become a zombie. And so it gets twisted around. So it's all about like
Yeah.
what is human, and it's all about like what a robot would think human is. And so it's like we had a lot of fun with that. It's like a lot of fun with like some of the other stories in there. It's like we have vampires, like there's a chapter with like vampires and zombies, and like what that looks like and how people view both of them. Actually, it's like you're not really any different, you know. And it's all about like the morality of what makes us human. That's kind of all of my horror books, is kind of like what makes us human and what's the value of humanity.
That's awesome. Yeah, I have yeah, you sent me a few some of those for the another zombie apocalypse, like a quick preview. And I did go through that. And I have to say that the one with the robot, the opening one with the robot and his mission in life was a very interesting twist. I don't want to use the word interesting because that doesn't really convey a lot of information, but it definitely catches you by surprise. I'll put it that way. The twist that you threw in there catches you by surprise, and it prompts not just the question about humanity, but also it touches on another issue about like what is um, at what point do we how what is the value of human life in terms and in contrast to the level of suffering that humans can endure, and where do you draw that line? When do you say enough is enough? And so definitely hitting on some deeper issues there. I
Yeah.
really like that one.
Well, and it's like I love a good twist though. So it's like to me the problem is like I'll sacrifice everything for the twist if it comes down to it. And so it's like Pandora, like going back to I guess Pandora here. It's like Pandora had a twist baked into this one. So it's like that's what kind of motivates me to write the most, is like what could be the twist. So like the thing, it's like I love that ambiguous ending of like, oh, which one of them was the thing, or that kind of thing, or any of them, did they survive? It's like, so I wanted to try and capture some sort of ambiguous ending like that too. And so like Pandora, I had this great twist in mind. I was like, oh, this is such a good twist, and it's in the book. It's like it has this twist, but halfway through writing, I just got hit. Like I like with I mean I tend to have like I had the beginning of my book planned, I had the end of it planned, and usually the part that I'm kind of figuring out along the way sometimes is how to get there. And so like Pandora, I kind of had it all plotted out, and I was writing it along, and like and then suddenly I just got hit with this idea of like, oh, I was like, that's so perfect, and I hate it so much. It's like one of those like twists where it's like I have to do this, and I'm actually really sad about it because it's like I found another twist I can throw in there, and it's so great because even I didn't see it coming, I guess. Because and so like I didn't
Sure.
really like prepare for it. I didn't really have to go back and change a lot. I changed a couple of things just to prepare for that, but it's like for the most part, I'm like, ooh, it's a great one that also blindsides you. And I love that kind of like I'm the person I love to try and guess twists in movies if I know that there's a twist. And so I don't know, it's like I love to throw those in there and try to hit people with that twist because that's kind of what sticks with you sometimes. And
Yeah.
I love to try and connect it in with that like greater moral issue. It's like, oh, it's kind of like the robot in the zombie apocalypse there. And so and yeah,
Awesome.
we're
So
gonna we're
you
gonna
start
bring
with
them
a
back.
twist.
Yeah, I
So you start
typically
with
start with the twist. It's like so I typically it's like that's how I write stuff. It's like I typically that's usually what hooks my mind. And if my mind can get hooked on something, I say I have to write it. And so it's like, so Pandora and Jericho, I actually started both of those with like, what is the twist in this? What's the big thing that's going to hit people? And then I go back and I build the world around that, because it's like it's this secret thing. It's all about the secret of like what's going on. That's what I loved about Silent Hill. That's what I loved about Resident Evil when I was growing up. It's like I love the creatures, and I love that survival and that gritty feeling, and especially that feeling of like, oh, I survived this in the end. You feel so accomplished.
Right.
And I wanted to try and convey that in the book. But the big thing with that, though, is like Resident Evil wasn't just a zombie thing. It was like there was more going on. There's creatures. That's why I find that interesting. I don't
Yeah.
actually find zombie movies that interesting anymore, because they're just zombies. But I love having extra things on there with the creatures and stuff. But I also love like those weren't the only villains. It's not the creatures. It's actually like in Resident Evil, it was
Right.
this terrible corporation, good old
They were the
Umbrella.
victims, right? Yeah, they were the
Yeah.
victims, and that was different from, because at the time, like the popular games that popular shooter games were like Doom was in like third evolution or something, and then you had obviously you had Wolfenstein and a lot of the first person shooters that are kind of similar to that, and then here comes like Resident Evil from the sidelines, like from nowhere, and you have no idea what's going on at the beginning. You're like dropped into the middle of this like situation, and you have to figure out eventually what all the pieces are, as opposed to having it all explained to you and then just be this mundane first person shooter, which I love, but still they are they're pretty, there is a definitely formulaic aspect to them.
Yeah.
So Resident Evil is just like what you were describing, kind of turned everything on its head. And
And I just love to do that all the writing, though. It's like
yeah.
it's like even if it's not horror, it's like there's something more going on, and often there's multiple bad guys. So it's like just because it's like that's kind of life in a way. It's like, and so it's like, and having like to showcase, like especially in horror, it's like I have evil, and then there's like middle evil, and then there's good. And so I kind of like have like try to showcase like what those all look like, and like juxtapose them, I guess. And just had a lot of fun with that. I was writing I was supposed to have 4 books, and that was Pandora, Jericho, Icarus, which I'm halfway done writing, but that's when I started doing comics. And then I have the last one, which is Babel, and it was all building towards something too. They're all connected, but I'll get back to it eventually. But I just love that, like telling that moral strand, kind of like what you're saying, like they're in Raccoon City or whatever, like the zombies are actually the victims. And so
Right.
it's like,
Yeah, exactly.
and that's why I just found that really interesting. I also found like, say, playing Resident Evil growing up, it's like I thought it was really cool to have this game that's also telling a lot of stuff through reading. Actually, they had all these notes you would pick up,
Yep.
and I kind of miss like some of that nowadays. Like you don't get that as much. It's a lot more shootery and it's a lot more actiony, and that's fine. But I think there's like so much depth you sometimes miss, and they don't always do that so well, except for like games like say Mass Effect. Like Mass Effect, I got the little ship over here, but like Mass Effect did a great job of like having this actiony game, but they all have like random stuff like playing in the background that you can like hear news stories and stuff, and it really builds the world.
Oh, that's neat. Yeah, I haven't played that one. I'm gonna definitely have to check
So
that out.
best game ever. I was so thrilled when on my show I got one of the writers of Mass Effect to come on
Oh,
Diabolic
cool.
Shrimp, and I was just like over the moon. His name is Chris Hepler. He wrote a really cool vampire book, by the way. But
Awesome. Yeah, we're in that morally gray area. I think it's the best place to play. I'm one of my short stories is in an anthology that just came out called Crooked V2. Jesse Quack, Kwak. I'm gonna have to ask her how to pronounce that properly. Was the editor and also contributed to that. And the entire premise is set in the near future. A bunch of different short stories, but they're all like none of them have anybody that you could identify as a good guy or a bad guy. You have a protagonist, but you may or may not like the protagonist, their motives. I've read a few of the stories. You're gonna like the protagonist. That doesn't make them good people. And so it's just a wade through morally gray, and I love that, because like you were saying, I mean it's life, right? There are very few people that fit into the good guy or bad guy mold. We're all just people coexisting.
Yeah. Well, I'm having so going forward here, right? It's like so I'm trying to build out like I'm about to launch my business wing on Diabolic Shrimp, where people can buy advertising on the sides or whatever for really cheap. And so it's like, because it's like just, but they can still get some of that through just being part of Diabolic Shrimp. It's free to be part of Diabolic Shrimp, and I give people reviews and stuff for free. But like, but yeah, it's like I'm trying to build out that side of it. But another part of that is like, I'm trying to build out more stuff to do on Diabolic Shrimp that's just free, you know, and just fun. And so I'm trying to showcase like comic stuff, and so we're about to launch like a Star Wars comic on there. This is a Star Wars fan comic, and it's set like 24,000 years before the original Star Wars. And so and it's just gonna be a fun one. We're just gonna release some pages every single month, and it's just something Laszlo and I wanted to do. And so, but on top of that, though, I was like, what can we do that can make kind of like a game element to Diabolic Shrimp? I've always wanted a game element on there. And and I thought it would be a great time to revisit some of my earlier writings. So like say Pandora, I was like, it's all set on this cruise ship and what's going on there. But you kind of follow the characters that land on the cruise ship and are kind of figuring out after the fact. But I was like, oh, it'd be really fun to like do a kind of choose your own adventure. I grew up reading Choose Your Own Adventure,
Yeah, I remember those.
and so it's like, and I was like, I always wanted to write one, but I was like, I don't think I'm not sure how well those sell necessarily. And so I was like, how can I make a free one, you know, and also have like Lazo do drawings for it. And so I decided to do that for Pandora. And so I'm currently actually in the process of writing that. And it's like writing where it's like you're a character on this cruise ship, but right when everything goes down. So you're kind of there at the advent of all this horrible stuff that's happening. And it's like, but you get to make all these choices and it changes it. But I was trying to recapture like the tricky part is kind of like what you said, like the morally gray and like the character is like likable or not. And I have so much fun building mystery into every character. Like every character always has something going on in their background, even your main character, and that you just don't know as the reader and you find out as you go. But I was like, it's really hard to do that when it's like the person that's choosing stuff. It's kind of the one that you want driving the story. And that's a really hard story to set up, I'm discovering. And so it's
Yeah.
like, especially for like horror without like giving away everything, because it's meant to be a prequel to the book. And I don't want to really give away all the cool secrets of the book, I guess. And so I just want to kind of like highlight some of them. So I was like, how can I recapture some of the fun of the book? And so I found ways to do it where it's like, who you are actually, or that your choices really determine actually who you are. And so going along, and you can be very different, like what you are in the end up, and what you do along the way. And so I was trying to recapture like, because Pandora actually tell like all my horror books have a rule to them. It's like I have two main characters and we jump back and forth between them every chapter. And like, so it's like it's trying to just set up like, how can I get these two people across the room or across the ship or across the town? And Jericho is a mountain town that they don't know what's going on. And so it's like, how can I get them to where they need to go and then tell the story at the same time and then have it a deep perspective with them. But I always have a third element in them. And so it's like Pandora, I had like the creature, like every 6 chapters or so, you actually get the perspective of the creature like
Oh,
talking
that's
to you.
cool.
And it's
Yeah.
like, it was really fun. It was like really creepy. And so it's like trying to write this creature was very dark, like having to sit there and write in like the dark basement and then go and, you know, go back to teaching now and then. I still suck now and then with elementary kids, like, hey kids, I was writing this horrible thing this morning. And so what are you writing? Oh,
Right.
dogs. But
Yeah,
like
exactly.
and so I was trying to capture some of that though for this like choose your own adventure. Like Jericho also
Yeah.
similar. It's like I wanted that third element. So I actually wrote these horror poems, but they have everything to do with the story. They actually tell you what's going on if you actually really look at them. And so it's like these like horror poems that are being sprinkled throughout. And so
Oh, that's
so it's
cool.
kind of fun to like have that third element. So I was trying to find a way to do that in this like choose your own adventure, because it's like who you are and your choices like develop like who you are as a person, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess that's the point of choice.
That's good. Yeah, well, so I was thinking a couple of things as you were talking there. One of our, I'll add you if you're interested. I'll add you to. We have an email list of all the former people that have come on the show and people who've opted in to, and then we just shoot emails to the whole group
Oh,
occasionally.
sure. I'm always happy to be on
Yeah.
any author's newsletter.
So there's somebody on there, and I can't remember her name, but I'll have to when I add you to the group, I'll kind of introduce you. That has done choose your boot. She doesn't call it choose your own adventure because apparently that's trademarked, I guess.
Yeah,
And
it is.
so it's called something else, but she does that
Choice
with.
novel.
So there you go, something along those lines. But it's a book novel called Asylum, where you can kind of you wake up at the very beginning, you're in an asylum in this like bed, you wake up and you have to figure out what on earth was going on. So it's kind of I think it's kind of cool, that aspect of things, to be able to explore that and to keep it fresh. It seems like a challenge. Like it's not something I think I could do very well, but but I know but it sounds like something you've put a lot of thought into.
Well, I'm
So
learning, I guess. It's like as I'm making this, when you make a video game, because I'm making a video game now, and that's a very different kind of writing, and like its design is like video games. It's almost like the books I build from a twist outward, and it's like video games. It's like you build from the mechanics outward. So it's kind of like what are the things your character can do? Because ours is old school, like 2D side scroller exploration kind of game, and so it's like everything in the story is going to be told around that. But you start with like, can I shoot? Can I double jump? That kind of thing. And it's like, and then you build everything from there. But it's like the tricky part is like it's an open world because I don't know if you ever played any games like Metroid, but like
oh
this is a
yeah,
Metroidvania. It's like Castlevania and Metroid. So it's like, and for anyone that doesn't play games, it's like you can explore in any direction essentially, but there's like always stuff blocking you. It, like you can't destroy
eventually,
metal
yes.
bricks. Yeah, so it's like you can't destroy metal bricks yet, but eventually you get the ability to destroy metal bricks, and now you can go that way, and that's the excitement of those games. And so like trying to build that is like building a puzzle that you're also solving at the same time. It's really tricky. You build a whole labyrinth that the person can feel like they can go in any direction, but at the same time they can't. And you have to like direct them. And it's like it's honestly the trickiest thing I've ever created. And it's like trying to build this. I have like papers and papers back here. I look like a serial killer. They're just like they're like taped to a board
Like
literally. And I'm like,
strings.
I literally have like strings like this way, that way, and it's like this is over here, and I look like I'm like a conspiracy theorist or something. And like, but then like through doing that though, I was like, can I do a simpler version of this through writing? And so I had this whole bracket back here of like, this choice leads to this, but this one leads to this. And then these two can actually merge into one thing possibly. And it's like, it's complicated, but it's like, it's actually kind of fun to do. But the hard thing is like the writing of it. It's kind of like, because you have to be like, you are doing this. And I don't typically like that. Like, I don't know what they call that, second
Yeah,
person or
second
something like,
person.
right?
Yeah.
And it's like I'm not a big fan of like second person because I'm just really bad at it. And so it's like, but it's just like trying to be like you're doing this, and also making the main character like a blank slate that people can make into
Right.
them whatever
Yeah.
they want, but also telling a compelling story with that character. Because all my books often are figuring out like who is the main character and what is their deal, what is their past, and versus like kind of like Silent Hill was. Silent Hill was all about like this main character's like encountering stuff, but it's actually about who they are. And that's kind of what I
Right.
like to write
Yeah.
in my horror books. And so it's kind of tricky. It's like writing this thing where it's like you're a character, but you actually are something more, even though you're your own choice, I guess.
Cool. All right. Well, we're right at time. I feel like, this has been a great conversation, and I've got a lot of stuff we could probably continue talking, but we should probably stop.
Indeed,
So,
indeed.
so it's been great having you on, Josh Grant. What's the latest thing that people should come out and check out? I know you talked about Diabolic Shrimp. Is there any particular um, uh, work that you're really trying to motivate people to go check out right now?
Definitely. Well, it's like of course Pandora is like my bread and butter there. I was like, I do love Pandora as my novels. If you like horror, kind of thriller creatures kind of thing. Definitely near and dear to my heart always is The Lost Boy, which is the comic series. It's a very deep story. It's a retelling of Peter Pan as a vigilante crime fighter, but it's got a very deep moral to it. And another zombie apocalypse is something to look forward to, but that'll be another couple of months here. It's taking us a little bit longer. It's going to be 100 pages long, and so it's like it's really pretty for being a zombie thing. So it's like so definitely check that out down the road. And again, come visit us on Diabolic Shrimp. There's lots of free stuff there, and like it helps you keep connected, I guess, if you want. And there's a lot of interesting people there, like on the channel and everything that I interview. So and just thanks again though, Chuck, for having me on your show.
Yeah, no problem. And yeah, thank you for coming. Really appreciate it. All right. Have a great one.
You
Appreciate
too.
the time. See ya.